G'day everyone, we're here at vForum to talk to Pravesh Khana. Pravesh is an engineer with Dell and spent a lot of time on Hyper-V, and we're going to cover a bit of a topic which might be a bit controversial to do at a vForum, but it's going to cover why ESX and VM admins struggle with adapting to Hyper-V. So we're not going to be talking about the differences and why one might be better than the other. We're just talking about things such as the mindset changes and different management attitudes that need to be taken to it. So Pravesh, would you like to introduce yourself a bit further first?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Brett. My name is Pravesh. As Brett said, I work for Dell, but all the opinions I express here are personally my own. I blog on it-ninja.com.au or on Twitter at ninjaprav. You can follow me there. So like Brett said, the discussion is not about which technology is better. In my opinion, both of them have their own advantages and in some cases disadvantages. They're both equally comparable technologies. They're both great. They have their reasons to exist. Having said that, like the topic, one thing you said about is why ESX admins actually struggle with Hyper-V. I have in the past worked with a lot of ESX admins. I myself in the past used to be ESX administrator, moved over to a Hyper-V role and not completely cut ties with my ESX past. I'm still enthusiastic about both. I favor both of them equally. One big issue to start with all the ESX, and that would happen in any form of live, is people who have been using one form of technology or one sort of tool sets, they struggle with the new way of doing things. Obviously, Hyper-V is built with a Microsoft mindset, so their way of working on things are a little bit different to what ESX was doing. And the other thing is the concepts about how things are done in Hyper-V. So one big suggestion I make to each of the ESX admins who approach Hyper-V is keep your ESX hat aside. Yes, don't forget your concepts that you'll learn about virtualization. Fundamentals remains the same, but the way you approach them can be a little bit different. You just have to adapt to them.
So what are some of the most common struggles that you see, some maybe areas or some concepts that you find that VM admin has trouble actually picking up or adapting to, that they might need a bit of, maybe do a bit more reading on, or just not quite forget, but just put the VM hat aside as you mentioned?
So one of the common things that I've seen is interface. It doesn't look like my vCenter. Yes, vCenter is a product from VMware, not from Microsoft. So they're two different products from two different companies. Yes, they're meant to look different. So number one is explore the interface. Make sure you're used to it, and you make your way around the whole product. Familiarize with it yourself. The other big thing is PowerShell, and like any other Microsoft or even Linux, PowerShell is growing its wings everywhere. VMware is using it with PowerCLI, same kind of concept. PowerShell is now moving to Linux, so it is a language that's here to be there. It certainly won't disappear tomorrow. So guys, biggest tip for you is start learning, getting yourself familiarized with PowerShell.
So with PowerShell being a Microsoft's main command line tool now that we adapt to, VMware does have their PowerCLI, so the skills and the fundamentals they build in that, they should be easily transferable over to to PowerShell for Hyper-V management. Absolutely.
And like I think we were having a quick chat offline, and like Brett yourself mentioned that PowerShell has like advantages like having API management and things like that. Those kind of things, when you put into the mix, it makes it a lot easier for you to do, get around those differences on interface. If you're going and doing things in PowerCLI, it makes it very, very simple, or at least less painful for you to move over PowerShell and perform the same kind of functions.
And not to hang on PowerShell too much longer, but one of the things is on the fundamentals with the management, I take the assumption that if I understand how to do an API call in PowerShell for my VMware infrastructure, the base concept will be the same for going into Hyper-V, and the way I would do my loops and the logic I would use would be very similar. It's more just the specific commands to the application I'm managing.
Exactly. You knocked it on the head. So that's perfect. The other thing that people struggle with sometimes is how Hyper-V approaches the networking concepts. So that's one area that I would highly suggest people to go and do their researches on, skill themselves up, read about it. There's a lot of blog entries from Microsoft, and a lot of MVP communities have written a lot about it. So that's one area I would definitely suggest people to skill up before they get a deep dive into Hyper-V.
Yeah. So with storage, is one of those big pinnacles of virtualization. If you don't get your storage right, doesn't really matter what's on top, it's going to be a poor experience for all involved.
Yep.
Does Hyper-V also manage storage differently? For example, if I've got the same SAN, and is there going to be a difference in the way I have to handle that from Hyper-V to ESX? Do they handle basically the fundamentals of their storage? Is that going to be different for me when I have to adapt?
Sure. So, Hyper-V in itself is capable of handling your SAN, SCSI, or local attached storage, so that's not an issue. In fact, if you are using a System Center Virtual Machine Manager, you can actually have, you can make calls to certain hardware vendors, provided hardwares, where you can actually, SMIS providers, that kind of like an interface language that's written for VMM to be able to interface to them, and actually be able to provision your storage for your virtualization host. So in sense one, it makes it easier for you if you're doing things from your System Center side of things. Having said that, yes, VSX does it in a wouldn't say even simpler, but yes, a comparable, similar fashion as well.
Okay.
So they're comparable, yes.
Yeah, excellent. And do you find that there are common gotchas? You touched on networking before, that's an area where the concepts are going to be quite a bit different that people do struggle with. Are there common mistakes you see people making, maybe settings that should be configured that aren't, that whether it might be deep or even base configuration that you see is quite often missed?
Sure. I've worked with people who have years and years of experience on ESX. Their first host they see on Hyper-V, they say, oh, it's a Windows host. And that's where the first point I stop them. This is not a Windows host, it's a Hyper-V host. What you see as a Windows interface is actually a management operating system running on top of Hyper-V. That's number one biggest mistake that people make. The other one that people sometimes struggle with is Microsoft, when they implement it, especially in a clustered environment, they have to use the Windows failover clustering on top of Hyper-V. So that's one thing that you have to familiarize yourself with. And the other big thing is on the networking side, like I mentioned. In one example, I've seen an ESX admin actually going to Hyper-V and looking at all the network cards and go, oh, all of them are missing, except one is missing the default gateway. And the guy goes in and put in all default gateways on all of those 20 or so network cards that he had. Well, sure, way to fail. If you're running a Hyper-V host, you're only meant to have a default gateway, for example, on one of your network card. Most likely that would be your management host.
So that part about the networking, and while you mentioned that Hyper-V isn't a Windows server, it's a Hyper-V server, it sounds like it'd be helpful to understand those base Windows networking concepts in how Windows handles its IP stack. Would you say that's another area to look into as a fundamental?
Most definitely. And one other thing that I just came in my mind is, and a lot of people, myself, I have got into this pitfall myself, updating your Windows host before you start setting it up, especially from the clustered side of things. There is a certain set of patches that have word released from Microsoft. For Windows Server 2012 R2, there's a specific set of patches for clustered, for failover clustering. Make sure you apply those. They are on top of and they are not provided on top of your normal Windows update thing. So you have to go to Microsoft site and search for them and look for it. I can put them an entry of those on my blog, and you can refer to that if people find it helpful.
Yeah, that would definitely be helpful and save us sort of hunting around trying to find them and maybe missing one or two.
Sure.
So, are there any common misconceptions you find with like when people talk about Hyper-V, things that everyone just assumes, which may have been the case, isn't the case, or how it happens to be?
Yep, one like I said about it's being a Windows host, and the other one which is very common is Hyper-V is not stable. That's what they say. And a lot of the misconceptions are depending on the environment they come in. As far as my knowledge goes, Microsoft Azure platform is actually hosted on Hyper-V.
Okay.
Well, if Microsoft running X billion dollar worth of business on Hyper-V, it has to be stable. They're doing something right. So approach the technology with an open mind, explore it, and then design it the right way, and I'm sure it will work for you as well.
Now, one of the things with Hyper-V and anyone running, I've got to scratch my head on this one, I think Windows 8 and higher, they can install Hyper-V on their desktop.
Yep.
Now there are two different variants of Hyper-V. There is the client and the server. So server is the one for Windows Server. The client is what's on Windows 8, 8.1 and 10. If I wanted to look into it and I don't at work maybe have an environment where I can do it, is that a comparison, like is that a good place to start even though it doesn't have the full feature set and I can start understanding how it functions?
Definitely. So you won't be able to see most of the clustering features which you only get in advanced Windows enterprise version of Windows Server. However, just to get your hands dirty with Hyper-V, Windows 8 or 8.1 or Windows 10 is a good place to start. I mean, you'll get all the basics of it right. And it's from the code base, the essentials are exactly the same from a single server point of view, yes.
And are there any other ways to get hands-on experience? VMware is quite well known for having its hands-on labs.
Yes.
Those sort of things there for people who want to get a bit more hands-on experience. They want to understand how to do it because, again, not everywhere can have a test environment that's separate to their production sometimes.
Exactly.
Yeah, people skirt the lines on that one. Are there resources that allow people to do that to get to learn it?
Most definitely. I mean, Microsoft has a lot of products, a lot of tutorials and videos and demos and things like that available on Microsoft Virtual Academy. Just search on MVA, on Hyper-V 2012 R2. There is a 2016 version out there. It's the list of topics available is a lot less than what it is for 2012 R2, but it's certainly growing. They do have hands-on labs. I can't remember the exact link on top of my head right now, but yes, I'll put that on my Twitter feed and on my blog.
Yeah, and I'm sure that link's also a quick Google away, and
yes,
we all know how to use that. So that pretty much covers everything that we had prepared for this and what we wanted to cover. So thank you everyone for listening, and thank you very much, Pravesh, for taking the time.
Thank you, Brett.
Thank you.